We also give you an insight into Kenya's budget allocations on the regional scene. With these and more, stay tuned. It's time for business. The State Minister for Finance designate, Amos Lugolobi, presented the 44.7 trillion budget for the financial year 2021-2022. Now in the new budget, there is an increase of 12% VAT levied on airtime, and OTT will be scrapped off to widen the tax base, among others. Let's take a look.
Usually, Minister for Finance presents the budget, but before the vetting process is complete, the President is mandated to choose who presents the budget. The appointed Minister of State for Finance in charge of planning and Member of Parliament in Tenjeru North, Amos Lugolobi, has presented the National Budget 2021-2022 at Kololo Independence Ground.
Economic growth for this financial year is projected at 3.3%, rising from 3% last financial year.
In the budget, Uganda's economy size has grown from 108.5 trillion in 2016-2017 to 148.3 trillion. Human capital development has bagged the biggest share of the national budget with 7.7 trillion, followed by security with 6.9 trillion shillings. 560 billion has been provided for the procurement of vaccines. The National Medical Stores budget has been increased from 420.3 to 600.3 billion. 124.9 billion has been provided for rural water and 523.4 billion for urban water to improve sanitation. 134.9 billion has been allocated to enhance digitization of the economy. 1.67 trillion to support agro-industrialization initiatives.
The agro-industrialization strategy will address low production and productivity of primary agriculture, poor harvest, handling and storage, limited value addition, and insufficient market access.
1.1 trillion for the development of energy infrastructure and services. 5.1 trillion for integrated transport infrastructure and related services. 358.5 billion for innovation and technological development. Judiciary funding has been enhanced from 199.1 billion to 376.9 billion.
The proportion of cases that are over 2 years old have reduced from 24% in 2017 to 17.5% in 2021.
To widen domestic local revenue collection, a 12% tax on airtime shall be introduced.
Value-added services and internet data, excluding data for provision of medical services and the provision of education services.
An export levy of 7% on the value of fish meal exports, 5% and 10% on processed and unprocessed gold and other minerals respectively.
And number 6, close all bonded warehouses for imported sugar for re-export to avoid undeclaration and misclassification. These administrative measures will generate about 800 billion shillings in revenue collections.
Uganda's debt burden stands at 63 trillion shillings, and one of the key components to sustain this is to prioritize borrowing.
Equivalent to 49.8% of GDP. Uganda will not default on repayment of its debt. All contractual debt obligations will be fully honored.
The budget has been read under the theme Industrialization for Inclusive Growth, Employment and Wealth Creation. Ivan Kahua, UBC News at Kololo.
After reading the 44.7 trillion shillings budget for the financial year 2021-2022, we sought to find out an expert's opinion on what they think about the budget. And this is what they had to say.
Economic experts are expressing reservations about the practicability of the budget they are describing bulgy. The budget, which is now taking rounds, is estimated at 44.8 trillion shillings. Putting other factors, it is comprised of domestic revenue figured at 22,425 billion shillings, equivalent to 13.8%, and 20,837 billion tax revenue and 1.588 billion non-tax revenue.
The budget, essentially, in my view, should speak to the needs of the people. So what are these needs? 76% of the population is in agriculture. About another good percentage is in SMEs, small and medium enterprises. But you find that the proportion of the budget that is going for agriculture is very small.
Through what we call priority budgeting, we should have gotten a sector each year that we dedicate. We have done this to the economy war, we did it to the electricity, we've done it for security all the years. What is it that is preventing us from dedicating a budget to the agriculture boosting, especially during this COVID time?
Uganda's debt soared to US dollars 17.96 billion as of 31st December 2020, which is equivalent to 49.8% of the gross domestic product.
2020, if you looked at the amendments, they were responding to the COVID-19. Not comprehensively, but still a response. One of the things that we needed in the 2021 is still a further response to the COVID-19, because the effects of the pandemic will be seen even in the next 10 to 20 years. So there is still need for a consistent relief system.
If you contract debt and debt and debt, it will really eat up. It will eat up your budget. It will create a situation in which you are not able to finance other services. How are you, where are you going to get, if your air collects 21 trillion shillings, out of the 21 trillion shillings, we are going to pay 38% of the entire budget, remember, to debt financing.
The budget provides for tax policy interventions which need to be implemented in the financial year 2021-22. And URA has to collect taxes amounting to 21 trillion shillings. However, with the COVID-19 plague and the lockdown on some businesses like schools and hotels, experts say this money is going to be hard to raise.
Collecting taxes is going to be very hard because when URSS is going to collect 21 trillion shillings, they are the ones who know where they are going to get the money from. But as far as I can see, restaurants are closed. People at home. We have a pandemic. We are going to borrow $1 billion from IMF to continue running. The entire tourism sector is shut down.
A tax should be like a bottle principle. Each bottle stands on its own bottom. If it is a big bottle, it stands on a big bottom, and respectively.
Development of integrated transport infrastructure and related services has also been allocated 5.1 trillion shillings and 1.1 trillion to development of energy infrastructure next financial year, 2021-22. I'm Nafka Farida.
It has been sounded important for the public and private sector along with civil society to benchmark the new provisions in the new budget with the past ones in order to account for government spending. In an exclusive interview with Julius Kapwepwe, the program's director at Uganda Debt Network, he shares historical budget insights on key sectors. Uganda's national budget has been numerically increasing over the years, giving specific attention to unique needs per sector.
Let's look at agriculture as an example. In financial year 2015-16, agricultural sector was allocated 510 billion shillings. In 2016-17, it increased to 855 billion shillings. Financial year 18-19, it became 945 billion shillings towards a trillion, and in financial year 2019-2020, agriculture received over $1 trillion shillings. And of course, that trend is also going to continue into the forthcoming financial year.
Despite an average increase in the budgets the past financial years in sectors like agriculture, social development, works, transport, legislature and education, some others have had minor increases and decreases. The health sector's allocation has been reduced from 2.78 trillion in this financial year 2020-2021 to 2.523 trillion shillings this coming financial year.
There has been a bit of reduction in the forthcoming financial year in the new budget, in other words. But that mainly is on account of end of some of the donor projects. Some of the grants also have not come through, so the yield expectation has been a bit lower than should have been otherwise, if you go by the promises that hitherto had been made by some of the international development contributors and the like. Of course, there has generally been a declining in grants globally. It's not just a Ugandan matter. Globally, because of the COVID situation and the reducing financial muscles.
Despite the coming national budget being 900 billion shillings less than the current, government, according to NDP3, will now finance national budgets with the program-based approach, as opposed to sector-based, to enable successful decentralization of national resources.
The contribution of that particular loan that had been gotten from the World Bank, initially $150 million, but which subsequently expanded to include other cities from 14 initially planned for to 26 to date. That has been exponential performance. Challenges notwithstanding, the bit of stealing and underperformance in some areas. So overall, I think we are going into the next financial year when the country is at a better stand, or stance for that matter, than we were 5 years ago.
Other important aspects to put into consideration are the new 13 proposed tax measures that will aid revenue collection and the country's debt management strategy to ensure a progressive performance. Wadulo, Arnold, UBC News. Investment in youth is not only a social obligation, but is also rewarding in an economic sense. This was disclosed by the youth in Kampala while addressing the media on the National Youth Position Paper on the financial year 2021-2022 national budget in Kampala.
Uganda is entering a critical stage of its development path following an increase in the population, hence the need to invest in the future population. Presenting a paper on the National Youth Position on the financial year 2021-2022 national budget in Kampala, Mutiaba Rashid, who is also a youth, says there is need to strengthen youth participation in governance processes and provision of non-formal vocational training.
When youth have low levels of financial literacy, they often make unproductive financial decisions and miss opportunities for investing. By communicating the knowledge, skills, attitudes associated with sound money management, financial education can offer these individuals the means to use their scarce finance resources.
Creating self-employment to the urban and rural youth to enhance them equally will require an increase in funding of the youth livelihood programs.
Are the people who attend to young people fully trained? Do they really know how to handle issues of young people? Those are the things that we look up to. Those are the things that we are pleading for government when they are thinking of allocating money in the health sector. We know the budget has already been confirmed, but what we are trying to say, we are saying that that little money that is already there, please make sure that you also focus on issues that affect young people.
The youth recommended investing in strengthening their capacities in understanding their roles and rights in implementing their mandates due to the poor functionality of youth councils.
We propose that at least 5% of the local revenue and at least 5% of the unconditional grants from the central government should go to the youth intervention.
All government initiatives such as Parish Development Model, EMYOGA, Youth Livelihood Program, UWEP, among others, should hinge on meaningful participation of young people in designing and implementation of such programs, which requires adequate budget allocations for the youth programs.
Government has been urged to invest in skilling and expanding livelihood opportunities in agriculture, mining, energy, technology and finance sectors. An increase in funding towards violence against women and girls and increasing budget allocations to youth activities at district level has been highlighted.
There is inadequate funding of sexual reproductive health services and commodities, leading to increased teenage pregnancies and reduction in youth-friendly services, in addition to increased infections and diseases.
Many youths, especially in rural areas, do not have access to information on government policies and programs, and this is further compounded by the limited space for engagement.
Government has also been urged to target more youth in interventions of Agriculture Credit Facility and Youth Capital Venture Fund across the country. Sudat Kaye, UBC.
In our corporate news, government has established a national e-waste collection and management center on 6th Street industrial area to deal with the growing amount of e-waste and the effects it poses on the environment and human life. Established on the 2012 e-waste management policy, its major objective will be to systematically collect and dispose of e-waste. Since 2006, the National Environment Management Authority, NEMA, has been working closely with the Ministry of Information, Communications Technology and National Guidance, the National Enterprise Corporation and other stakeholders who form the National E-Waste Steering Committee to institute an e-waste management infrastructure.
NEMA as an authority established by government, one of the responsibilities to ensure that waste does not cause contamination, does not affect the public. So by establishing this center, we have accomplished one of our obligations of managing waste. And now, NEC, National Enterprise Corporation, through Rural Industries, is going to manage this electronic waste center.
E-waste refers to all electrical and electronic waste and all its parts whose use has expired.
All of us know they have a short lifespan. Everything eventually has to die. So if we do not manage that process of how we recoup that equipment from the public, we put everybody's health at risk.
The United Nations Global E-Waste Monitor Report shows that in 2018, the e-waste generated in Uganda was estimated at 17 million kilograms, with a projection of 4.5 million kilograms of e-waste per annum to be generated annually from 2018 to 2022.
For your information, NEC, as ED members said, has been dealing in waste management. Annually, we manage about 500 tons of waste in rural industries. So this is an added assignment of e-waste that we are going to put in place.
The public will therefore collect all e-waste in designated locations while they wait for community collection endeavors by government, because most electronics contain toxic materials including beryllium and cadmium, which have serious effects on the environment. Wadulo, Arnold, UBC News. Well aware that this is East Africa's budget season, in Kenya, the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani unveiled the country's $33.3 billion financial estimate. Now Kenya aims to raise $16.46 billion in taxes in the fiscal year starting in July. But the Finance Ministry is being criticized for submitting yet another overly optimistic spending plan. Let's take a look.
Even excluding pension services from the equation, this is not the first time in Kenyan history when the country's forecast tax revenues are insufficient to even cover the cost of running public services at all levels of government. The East African nation will be spending over $10 billion just on servicing debt, domestic and foreign, in the fiscal year starting in July. Now, for years, the Finance Ministry has also consistently missed revenue estimates, usually by double digits, from July 2017 to last June. You can see the trend that's building up over there. So given this history, the revenue target in this budget at over $16.5 billion is seen by many analysts as being entirely unrealistic. As a share of GDP, income tax and value-added tax have in fact been consistently falling since 2013, and that's despite efforts to introduce new taxes over the years. So over the last 3 years, these new tax proposals have included a so-called Robin Hood tax that would have taken 0.05% of any transfers over $4,600, even if you're paying that money to pay your taxes. That proposal, however, was rejected. However, last year, legislators did approve two other taxes, the enactment of a digital services tax and a minimum tax, which, according to the Finance Ministry, was aimed at perennially loss-making firms.
is not the same way as private sector. For example, now, government has read the budget. The president read the budget, and once the budget is read, money in government is now frozen until it is approved by Parliament. So Parliament has a budget committee. So Parliament will sit, have the first reading, that is the law. And after the first reading, they will have a second reading, which will send the bill to different committees of government, where every minister will account to the committee that is responsible for that ministry about their budget, to defend it. Then there's a budget committee. When this is done, it will take maybe a month or two, right? They will come back for the second reading in Parliament in the plenary. By about September, the government will have a third reading, Parliament will have a third reading, and budget will be passed by September. At that time, they will release the funds. 3 months from now, the government is frozen because of the laws and the constitution. And the government cannot spend money without following the constitution and without approvals and different sectors approving. Consequently, there is a problem. Although government has put a lot of money in the Ministry of Health, that money is not going to be available to the Ministry of Health until it is approved, and cannot come from the consolidated fund to the ministry until it is approved by Parliament. 3 months from now, we are vulnerable. The rate at which we are dying is critical. The government, the Ministry of Health has no money to buy the vaccines because it's not yet approved. So this is a danger. So no matter how much money they put in the Ministry of Health, we are still vulnerable. Private sector cannot wait, because for us we don't need Parliament to approve our donation. We are calling upon our friends to donate as generously as they can to come out. And the important thing is the messaging, to tell people to be careful, because this is a disease we can avoid if we are very careful. So, but the government, to be able to go on radio and television, they have to pay. And so to pay, they need the money, and the money has to be approved. But private sector can find this money, and the media houses can work with us, and we can reach our people and save our lives.
In our Sounds of Business, we share with you the graphicized budget allocations for the financial year 2021-2022, just to help you get familiar with the budget figures with the soothe of music. It is evident that we're undergoing a phase in life that is likely to shape a new future for us all. The pandemic is pushing us to the wall, but let's not give up the fight against COVID-19. Let's heed to government's SOPs and also be ambassadors in our homes, communities and workplaces. It is this kweberera move that will help reduce the spread of the pandemic. Otherwise, thank you for joining us in this week's episode of the Weekly Business Roundup. My name is Wadulo Mark Arnold. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Hotel, and a big shout out to Suits by John Merry. Join us next time, same place. From the team, we must say good night.